for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sally Swan. I'm head of partnerships at Much Loved, and I'm joined this morning by my colleague Richard Baker, who's one of our esteemed account managers, and we've got two fantastic guests with us this morning, both from East of England Cooperative Funeral Services. We've got Colin Dixon, who's head of funerals, and David Downs, who's central operations manager. And the purpose of this morning is kind of quite a relaxed conversation, really, between the four of us about East of England making this decision to go cashless, so to streamline their kind of funeral donations. Before we get into that, I just got a few kind of housekeeping. So if you've got a question that you'd like to ask, please do get involved and use the chat box. The session is recorded and we will make it available afterwards. So if you want to share it with colleagues, you would be most welcome to. So we'll put it on the support site in a couple of days time, and it will be accessible from there. But if you're not sure where that is, then please feel free to get in touch with Richard or myself, or just to email support@muchloved, and we'll direct you in the right place. So on the sort of subject of donations, charity or in-memory donations and donations online, I thought you might be interested to kind of have a look at the scope of in-memory fundraising. And we quite often work with an organisation called Legacy Foresight. They support charities with research around legacies, but also in-memory fundraising, benchmarking. And they've ascertained that charities in the UK receive between 1.8 billion and 2.4 billion a year through in-memory fundraising. So that's an enormous amount of money. And interestingly, that funeral donations are the strongest source of that income. So there's a huge amount of potential for charities to be supported in this way. And that online payments are now more popular than cash and cheques. And you know, that probably isn't a great surprise to you. I also took the opportunity to have a look at sort of online payments in general, and just looked at the figures from 2022. There wasn't very much available from 2023 yet, but nearly 60% of all payments in the UK in 2022 were made using cards. So that's not just obviously donations, but that's purchases as well. And the contactless payments increased from 7% in 2016 up to 37% in 2022. So you can imagine how that's increased last year as well. Now, just kind of bringing it back to where we are and using processing donations online, funeral donations online, I thought you might be interested to see some of the figures from Much Loved. So we process all of our donations online, although people can collect cash and cheque donations and record them on their tribute page. But out of all of our donations, 18% of the donations were made via mobile wallets. And by that, I mean Apple or Google Pay. The majority of those were actually made by via Apple Pay, but it's so easy, as you can see from the screenshot on the slide. You know, once people have got the tribute page on their phone, it's literally, you know, they've put the amounts in that they want to donate, and then it's a couple of clicks, and then they can make that donation through Apple or Google Pay directly, rather than having to put in their credit card details. The average online funeral collection that we get through Much Loved is around £400. Now, I don't know the figure, the offline figure, but you probably all have your own idea of what that could be. I suspect it's probably around £200, but feel free to put in the chat what you think it is from your experience. And also the individual donation that we collect is around £45 because our service collects gift aid. So that amount would include gift aid as well. So that helps to kind of boost the average donation amount. And we're seeing a massive increase in donations collected through our service. So there's clearly a popularity for donations to be collected online. So we've seen an increase last year in over 20%.
So yeah, we're joined today by Colin and David. So just a little bit of background about how we've worked with the East of England Co-op. We partnered with East of England back in 2019. some facts and figures there, obviously based over in the eastern counties, 55 branches. I think that's correct. I'll probably slap the wrist in a minute if that's not. But in May last year, the decision was made at that it will only be collecting digital donations. To give you a bit of an idea of scale, we've processed 53,000 transactions for the East of England. And you see the average online donation figures there. Since we've begun the change to or transition to digitalisation, we've seen about an increase of 1/5 in the number of transactions and also the value of transactions. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Colin and David into the fray. I guess firstly, if I can just ask, what was your motivation for going digital, and pinned on the back of that, how did you go about sort of implementing that change amongst your teams?
Cheers, Richard. Morning, everybody. Colin here from East of England. Quite simple, really, to answer your question, Richard. We listened to our colleagues, and we certainly listened to our clients around some of the issues that were being faced by cash donations, in particular donation boxes. So whether that was the integrity of the amounts of cash and the additional pressure on our colleagues at handling that, or whether it was the needless pressure of clients having to deal with that cash after the funeral and not actually sometimes being sure what that process looked like. So we like I said, we did quite a lot of listening with our clients and their families, who, if we're honest, we're increasingly asking about digital options. And I think as generational changes happen, that's quite a natural thing to happen. It got to a point of the clients not knowing we could do it for them. They particularly if you're arranging a family funeral for the very first time, which is often the case, as we'll all know, they don't know what that process looks like, and actually taking the burden away from them was one less thing for them to worry about, and that was definitely beneficial by going to digital only. Anything to add there?
And also, we were partners already, but in terms of the actual implementation, how you sort of got the take up from the arrangers to create the pages to then go on to help manage those donations. What was that like, the implementation stage?
Yeah, so I'll take up on that one, Richard. Good morning, everyone. I'm David from the East of England Funeral Services. So just to build on Colin's point as well about why we decided and what sort of motivators for us to do this, another point to add in, I think we'll all probably see on this call the amount of admin time that colleagues and branches will spend on administrating donations can be quite timely. So one of the key sorts of motivations as well was to try and decrease that time someone's in branch counting cash, sending out checks to families. So that was another sort of key driver in this. And in terms of implementing it, we talked to our teams out there to see what we would need to do this. And before we even got to the point of implementing it, we have to, in funeral, I always find that we're all very resistant to change, and the industry is changing really, really quickly. And sometimes we put the barriers up ourselves about making changes like these, but we actually thought now it's time to actually do it. So in terms of implementation, we made a very clear plan on how we were going to approach this in terms of arming our teams with all the sort of correct information and facts for our clients as well. The team of arrangers already know how to set the pages up, so the training was more around how did they talk to the clients about this. So we created a guide for our team. We had sort of individual team calls as well, talking through the change and why we were doing it, and then gave them permission to go off and try it. So we trialed it in a certain area, and that was pretty successful, and then we sort of moved to all the areas our region.
Yeah.
And the response from the arrangers?
Look, over, like Dave said, we as an industry do not like change. That's a fact, and I think we'd all smile when we make that statement because it's true. But bringing the arrangers on the journey and the operatives, I think there are two funeral operatives are what we'd call bearers or undertakers in other business. So they were the two key populations, if you like. So arrangers, obviously, at the point of arranging the funerals with the families and bringing the families on that journey as well as themselves, and then the operatives in terms of the client-facing piece at the funeral. So they were the two key populations we had to engage. I think Dave's point around trial is really important. This isn't something we just jumped into with 2 feet and hoped for the best and hoped it would stick. We trialed it in an area actually where cash donations are the highest percentage. Our reason being, if we could make it work there, we can make it work across our estate. So that was our approach, and it kind of nipped in the bud some of the naysayers by doing it in our biggest cash donation area, but before they could do so.
So did you show the results to the rest of the team from that trial? Is that one of the ways that you sort of got them on board?
Yeah, we did. We obviously shared the results, like Dave said. What we did Teams calls by geographical area with the arrangers from each of the branches across the counties. We showed them the results, Sally, but we also showed them what it meant to them in terms of time back in their day job, because as Dave said, the whole cash handling process, not just with donations but across the board, is really laborious when it comes to admin. And what we wanted to do was give the arrangers A, time back to spend with families, but B, concentrate on things that they wanted to do in local community, etc. And the gift of time back was definitely one of the biggest benefits.
Brilliant. And how have your families taken to the sort of new process?
Look, we'd be lying, I think, if we said we didn't have any queries at the beginning. That we expected that and anticipated that, but because we armed the teams with the information and the facts before any of these conversations with families happened, there were no issues when we transitioned to digital only payment, and genuinely no issues. We haven't had a single client-led complaint or negative piece of feedback around digital only payments, and if we had, we'd share that.
Brilliant. And have you seen a difference that it's made to sort of the overall business? I mean, obviously you've got time back, so you've mentioned that already. Is there anything else?
Yeah, so in terms of the overall business, time back also means a lot less of time processing things. So anything like cash. So we're now looking at ways where we can potentially cut down on cash collections now, which is another sort of thing that's come out of this. The arrangers here have also spoken about, the benefits of that time that they have got back, because that now gives them a lot more opportunity to be arranging funerals, which is obviously that it is their bread and butter, but it also gives them time to go out and do work in the local community as well. I keep talking about the admin time, but for anyone who's worked in a funeral branch knows that donations can eat up a lot of your time. So taking that away, that's just the main benefit, and the arrangers have all bought into it, and just gives them a lot more time to be doing the things that they should be doing as a funeral arranger.
Yeah, I think just to build on Dave's point there, one of our big internal missions is to be more engaged at a local community level. And I think what we did see, and talking to many arrangers since we made that transition, what we saw was arrangers upskilled themselves to become more aware of local causes, because it's so easy to default to a national charity, cancer research, Help for Heroes, whatever that is. But actually working hand in hand with our challenge to the teams to get out and engage in the local communities more, this has worked really well, because they've done both at the same time. So they're making themselves much more aware of causes at local level and now engaging with them from a community point of view, not just from the point of view of donations.
Just going to check quickly, actually. So Daryl from Heart of England just asked in the chat whether or not you remove sort of cash from all parts of your business, or whether it is just donations. So paying for the funerals and that kind of thing. Is that, are you still accepting cash and checks via that, or is it all, are you trying to sort of push everything online?
We still take cash payments for funerals because there are obviously families and individuals who want to pay cash, their personal circumstances, but we are seeing significant decline in cash payments even for funerals. That number lessens and lessens each month.
I think we've talked kind of off camera about this, but I presume that donations are part of pre-organised funerals through funeral plans. How have you kind of incorporated that, the change into those arrangements?
Yeah, so that was something I was quite concerned about before we even did this, and trying to find out what the answer was going to be around that, because obviously we've seen a lot of change to the funeral plan sort of regulations and what we can do with funeral plans. So I contacted our funeral plan provider, had a conversation with them, and they agreed with me that being able to offer an online tribute site would be sufficient for anyone who had chosen donation management in their funeral plan. Mm-hmm. If the funeral plan had been bought or purchased in the past sort of 18 months, and they'd sort of been individually chosen a donations box to be at the funeral service, that cost is then refunded at the time of need. Just to sort of add on to the whole point of doing this as well, and what we do on the odd occasion where we've had a family not too pleased about this, and they do have the opportunity to provide their own box at the service, but it's not something that we take any responsibility over. Yeah. Because again, that's made a big sort of difference to our teams in terms of there isn't any funeral director or operatives who are tasked with taking back to the branch £1,000 or whatever it is, because that's quite a risk to them and the business. So yeah, in terms of funeral plans, it's all been approved, and we've got the backing of our provider.
Yeah, and I think just to build on that, yes, there are absolutely some families who still want that cash option. To Dave's point, that's their choice and their responsibility to do so. What I can tell you is significantly less than 5% of our total funerals go with that option. Over 95% now are digital only.
So hopefully, Tom, again, question in the chat's just appeared about exactly that, sort of whether people can sort of manage cash donations. Yes, they can, but it sounds like it's just with their own vocation. Jess from Lincolnshire, just to answer your query, you started the rollout going digital last May 23. That was the start of the project.
Correct. Yeah.
So we're about 8 months in, and hopefully, it will continue to grow. And Amanda's question, all the co-ops are separate businesses. We've got a few on the call here today, and I think they're all making their own decisions as to whether or not they're going solely digital or not. But it seems to be that that is the way that we have another regional co-op that we work with, another partner that is digital only as well.
So I'm interested to know from a family's perspective, they don't want an online page. How do you manage that? How do your colleagues manage that?
Would you want to take that one?
We obviously give them the option of the cash, but what we don't do, and I think it's important to say, is we don't just say, okay, over to you, thanks very much, off you go, knock yourselves out with cash donations. It's not as cut and dry as that. The arranger will still guide them on local causes, etc. So just because there's nothing in it for us doesn't mean we don't still steer that family. At the end of the day, it's all about the engagement, and where we've got arrangers who are bought into the process and are delivering that day in, day out and making life easier for clients and themselves, the powers of persuasion of that arranger to guide the client and their families is quite substantial. So we.
Yeah.
It's not to dismiss that we don't come up against resistance, because we have, and we'd be dishonest if we didn't say we do. But it's about getting those options and the benefits of those options out on the table, and then ultimately the decisions down to the client. But like I said, it's that number is shrinking by the month.
Brilliant. There are a couple of questions have popped up, haven't they, Richard?
Yeah, so Darrell was just asking from Heart of England whether or not you encourage the use of the order of service, a QR code. So much love, each page has its own QR code, and I'll just quickly demonstrate here. Can't not bring out dear Uncle David. On the back of his page there, we've got his.
I'll just push it back a bit. That's
it's
it.
a little bit blurry, but there's the QR code there that will take visitors to his page. Published on the order of service. Do you encourage that, the use of that QR code?
Yes, we do. Yeah, so that's something which has been a key part of this, is actually driving that. So we had the occasional colleague who would actually do that sort of off their own back, and have made that change sort of naturally. And as part of this process, we've actually encouraged all of our teams to actually start doing this. And we're now seeing a big increase in that, where the arrangers are becoming a bit more confident in actually uploading QR codes onto the back of the order of service. Clients are generally okay with it as well. We've never really had any sort of negative feedback on that. I think, again, from someone who's been in funerals for just over 10 years now, you're always slightly concerned about something like that, because you think that's really different to what I've seen on the back of an order of service before. When you think, like, can I put a QR code on the back? Well, actually, the answer is yes. That's where I'm saying that sometimes we put the barriers up ourselves just because we've not seen it before.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean that we can't try it.
I think the proliferation of
really,
QR codes across sort of like everything. Everyone seems a lot more confident sort of scanning things with their phone to get the information that they require, and there's no reason not to be using the QR code.
Yeah, well, it's the ease of use, isn't it? I mean, it's much easier than putting a web address in if you can scan something and open. And also, it means that every funeral guest is potentially walking away with a tribute page that's sat directly on your website, and they're taking that home. It's in their pockets. They're getting home, and then they're able to then look at the tribute page, not just maybe in terms of making donation, but maybe they want to contribute to the page in a thought, a story, or a memory, which is really supportive and helpful for the family member as well.
Well, they can also upload their device, pictures from their device if they want to, instantly add those pictures. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you're right, but also look from a commercial point of view. I absolutely don't mind sharing it. It has helped us in the selling and offering of orders of service as well, by having that all-in-one approach. It just simplifies things for clients and their families. It's as simple as that.
And everyone that does scan, on that sort of business rationale, everyone that does scan that QR code and get taken to that individual's tribute page will be on your branded page as well, and they won't to remove those from their device. So they will always have a link to your business.
There is also the facility to be able to send the families a text message through the Much Loved portal with the details, the URL address of the tribute page. The idea being that families can then cut and paste that and put that into WhatsApp groups, and so they can share details about the funeral and maybe the charity that they want to support through the page. Do you think many of your arrangers are using that facility? I should probably know, but it's difficult for us to be able to track it.
They certainly talk about it, which in the the realm of resisting change is a good thing. Yes. I couldn't tell you a number in terms of percentage who use the option to do so, but they definitely are talking about it. Yeah.
Brilliant, excellent. And if this is just sort of out of interest really, but at which point sort of during the arrangement do you kind of approach the topic of donations? Or I presume that's probably kind of fairly set in your kind of arrangement form.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course, donations are and have always been part of the arrangement process and the arrangement conversation. I think it can either happen in the initial arrangement stage, or it can happen throughout the arrangement process. That's of course different by clients and their personal approach and where they're at whilst they're grieving for their loved one. But the arrangers are engaged and equipped and on hand to support with that process, and suggest good causes, for example, where perhaps they hadn't thought about that before. It was more of a paper tick box exercise. Yes, I've had that conversation.
Yeah,
it's a little bit more engaging now by having the conversation about the good causes.
yeah. And during the transition, how have you found the support from Much Loved? That's a slightly tricky question for you.
Yeah, if you all want to email me later for the truth, you can.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, really good. We've as Richard said, we've worked together for a number of years now. When we had this conversation about going cashless, there were some eyebrows raised. It's fair to say. But I think we worked really well collaboratively. We analysed the data month by month, and we knew it was heading in the right direction. So I think the collaboration piece has been really good for us as well as you guys. Yeah, brilliant. Well, it's a pleasure for us to work like that with you. So I've come to the end of my questions, and I just wondered whether, maybe it's an opportunity for the audience to put forward their questions. If you haven't already, feel free to pop your questions in the chat box. We've got a willing audience to ask questions and willing participants to answer. So please do, any burning questions, pop them in the chat box.
I think we've got a question from Tom which hasn't been approached yet.
Was that the question about whether or not you still manage cash donations?
Yeah, so if we take any payments, so just to sort of jump on that question, Tom, thank you for that. So the short answer is we don't take cash payments at all. So whether it's at a funeral service or inside a funeral branch, what I'm not saying is we turn people away, because you are right, that would potentially sort of run the risk of someone not being able to donate to a charity in memory of someone. What we do sort of in branch, if someone comes in and asks to pay a cash donation, we then signpost them to the site. So we sort of help them in branch to get there and to get onto the site and do everything we can to make sure they are still able to make a donation. We've also brought in processes, so if we do receive a cheque in the post, or if we do receive cash in the post or anything like that, we've got processes in place where we can return that to the actual sender. So there's processes in there to sort of cover it. But yes, we don't take any cash or cheques for donations anymore whatsoever.
Okay, so there's another question. Do you do more than one charity per funeral? I mean, that you can do.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So yeah, that's probably something that's been going on for years, and we're all probably aware of that in our roles. So yeah, that continues. Yeah, there's no change to that. I suppose the only difference is rather than being able to split the total amount in a branch when it's collected in cash, the difference is now it's all done sort of automatically through Much Loved.
Yeah, so it's up to the donor. If there's multiple charities listed, then it's up to the donor which of those, say, 3 charities they make the donation to, and then so it's kind of clearly auditable. That's the way it has to be presented. Yeah.
And I think Ali asked the question about people who don't want an online tribute page. So what do you do? How do you manage those individuals? There is going to be, I guess, a steadfast number of people that just don't want to have this sort of service. What do you do in those instances?
Yeah, so and just to build on Colin's point earlier on, we do have a very small sort of minority of people who want cash still, but when we explain what we offer, that generally brings people on board. You probably find that when you still offer the cash and check option, even offering that will potentially lead someone there. If it's a flat out, this is what we offer, this is what we can't do, generally that will lead more people to the online site. As Colin said earlier on, if people still want to then collect cash or checks, they can do so, but they are responsible for it. And I get that probably sounds harsh, but we are offering a service, and they want to do something outside of that service, and it needs to be down to them. But we generally find at that point of the conversation that tends to bring people sort of onto the side of going online.
Yeah, I think one of, just to build on that, sorry, I think one of the things that surprised me most was the increase in the amount people donate digitally versus cash. But actually, if you think about it, it is a little bit of a no-brainer, because a cash donation that you might not have planned to make, just be the change in your pocket. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time I had change in my pocket, but if people have got the change in their pocket, they'll donate that. I think with the digital donation, because it's a donation with intent, as in you have an amount in your mind, whether that's 5, 10, 20 pounds, whatever. I was surprised at just how much more people do donate digitally versus cash. I didn't expect that, and you know, we're 20% more on the average donation, which is, you know, significant.
And notwithstanding the fact that you can obviously claim, you know, you'll give data allowance on an online donation as opposed to a cash donation. Obviously, it can't be done via the cash, so that increases the donation by 25%. I mean,
and I know we've got a couple of charity people here with us this morning as well, and I should probably point out the difference it makes to them in terms of processes, because the information they get from us is a clear sort of payment report. It's got all the information on it they need. They know who the donation is in memory of. They know who's donating, making the donation. So it's very clear and easy for them to be able to thank. It's very straightforward for them to put the information, the relevant information, back into their database. So it's a much more streamlined process from the charity's perspective. And it, you know, also frees up their time to spend time maybe developing or nurturing that relationship with that individual and making sure that they do get a thank you. And it's probably a more timely thank you than if it was collected via cash and check donations. So I think all round it helps to sort of streamline the process from everyone's kind of perspective, really. Yeah. Not to say as well that if the online page is set up, there are also extra benefits to the family in terms of the bereavement service that the pages can offer, you know, the thoughts, the stories, the pictures, the music that can be uploaded, and the fact that the pages can remain online for as long as the family want them to.
Yeah, I think if I may, I'm going to put my commercial hat on now, because we are businesses.
Absolutely.
And, you know, commerciality is important. I just wanted to make a point around commerciality. When we're all running businesses and we're looking at ways to not only increase revenue but also save on cost, one of the things this has enabled us to do is be much less reliant on the frequency of cash collections from our branches. You know, as Richard said at the beginning, we've got 55 pushing to 60 branches this year, so we're a pretty sizable business, and I appreciate not everybody is, and some are much bigger than us, but by reducing the amount of cash handled in the branches, our third-party pickups of cash, we've reduced the frequency of those, and in a business our size, that is literally thousands of pounds of savings a year. So just one to think about as cash reducing in cash use in general reduces.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Just one last thing from me, just to hold up another thing. You have sort of client information sort of leaflets. I don't know how far I've got to go back with this.
That doesn't really work with the blurred background.
Do you have information, sort of point of sale information cards in branch that you can sort of share with your families, that you can, you know, helps explain the service, what it's all about?
Yes, so similar to what you've shown on screen there, Richard. Yeah, we do have a brochure sort of in branch which talks the client exactly through what Muchlugged is and what it can do. Obviously, we've changed it slightly so it's in our own brand, but yeah, the clients love taking them away, gives them all the information they need, and tends to work really, really well.
Yeah, and I think also, just to build on Dave's point there, all of our branches have, you know, sizable tablets available as well, so they can show the client on screen what it looks like, you know, either on a tablet or what it'll look the same on a smart device, you know, i.e. your phone. So it's quite good to see the look and feel of it as well as just a paper pamphlet of this is what it is.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Great. Well, that there aren't any other questions coming in, so you're all off the hook. But thank you so much, Colin and David, for your time this morning. I think it's been really insightful, and I hope that it's been useful for our guests this morning.